Nowadays, it is easy to get worried about the value of money. Inflation is all over the news, all the time, and it feels like our purchasing power is flowing out of our hands. I've made quite a few videos about the best currencies that you can own in the world. You can check them out here and here. Today, let's talk about one currency which is not necessarily having a very good time right now, Bitcoin. And I'll quote Warren Buffett about this. So he would say, be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. I do not like too much the connotation around being greedy, so I would prefer to say be fearful when others are crazy and be opportunistic when others are fearful. In this video, we will explore whether Bitcoin is the ultimate world destroyer of all the world currencies. And might there be a currency, an ultimate currency that can even beat Bitcoin? Let's find out. My name is Greg Angelbert. I'm a life and personal finance coach. I share what I know about personal finance and coaching on a cup of coffee to help you live a life of purpose and build up your wealth. Why did human beings come up with the concept of currencies in the first place? I've made a video a few weeks ago which is called Why Money, that you can check here and here, and that explains the whole concept of why we invented money, the whole history of the concept. Essentially, we invented money out of necessity to facilitate exchange and trade between each other, meaning fungible, creating a long-term store of value for wealth, which means it needs to be durable, and that we could easily carry around, which means it's portable, and that we could trust in the issuer of the currency, meaning it's legitimized, and finally that would be limited in quantity to keep its value, which means it would be scarce. We tend to forget about that when we're considering what money to have in the first place, what kind of money we want to keep as store of value or as a potential investment. Short term, it doesn't matter as there is limited volatility in fiat currencies in the world, but what happens long term? Ask yourself this question: how would you rate the currencies that you use the most, your home currency, when you're considering all the characteristics that I've mentioned earlier? Most currencies would fare well with the fact that they can be used as a means of exchange for exchange of goods, and also that they're easily portable. Though the people of Germany living through the 1920s hyperinflation period might have disagreed. The key issues for fiat currencies that we can see over a long period of time is basically, can we trust who is issuing this currency? And also, whether they can be a long-term store of value, and finally, that it remains scarce. This graph shows you the evolution of several fiat currencies compared to gold since 1900. The picture is quite clear. Fiat currencies tend to go to zero in terms of value over time. One of the main reasons for that is inflation, which basically happens due to the tension between the supply of goods and services versus the demand for goods and services. The second reason is very much linked to the scarcity and legitimacy of fiat currencies. Surely, you can trust your home government to have the best intentions in mind with regards to your home currency, don't you? If you live in Venezuela or Zimbabwe in recent years, you already know the answer to that. It is not necessarily that governments have ill intentions to start with, but it's just too easy for politicians to want to make promises to get elected and to use a printing press to print more currency to make sure that they can fulfill those promises that they've made. Hence the devaluation of the currency, because there's just too much money in circulation. The current bout of inflation that we're suffering worldwide is very much related to that, and also to a supply crunch. You can see the current money supply of the US dollars, M2, to understand what I mean. Conclusion: there's not much value persistence in fiat currencies. Enter Bitcoin in 2009. The history of why and how Bitcoin was created has been very well documented, and you can find a lot of good videos in the description below if you're interested in the whole story. When Satoshi Nakamoto published his white paper in 2008 about Bitcoin, he had a very specific idea in mind. The key idea for him was about disintermediation. It was also about neutrality and security for a new currency system. Disintermediation is achieved by the fact that Bitcoin is not controlled by anyone. It is based on a peer-to-peer network of computers, where transactions are recorded on a public ledger called the blockchain. Neutrality is achieved through removing the central role of the banks with regards to intermediation when doing a transaction. They do not have to approve or not approve a transaction. It is also achieved through the fact that government controls their own home currency whether it's the US dollar, the euro, the rupee, the yuan. That means that political and economical considerations go into the policies that they adopt for their home currency, which is not neutral. And there is no such thing as a government authority for Bitcoin. Security is achieved through crypto encryption, that is using the SHA-256 protocol. This is used by miners to help secure the blockchain and verify transactions. And again, much more on the why of Bitcoin can be found in the video description. Another consideration is to look at what role Bitcoin can play in our life. For that, we need to compare it to what we actually use money for in our life today, but also to compare it to an investment aspect. This table shows us a rating system for some of the key characteristics of money, as we talked about earlier. As you can see, Bitcoin has a lot going for it compared to gold and fiat currencies. Its main problem is that it is young, and to build trust, you need time. One key aspect for Bitcoin is its scarcity. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins mined, and many have already been lost, maybe up to 6 or 7 million lost already. Before we get to Bitcoin performance, you know what to do if you like this video. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel and put the notifications on if you want to receive more content like this every week. And as I've mentioned before, check out all the other videos that you can find in the descriptions. There's many interesting historical perspectives and other perspectives from other YouTubers out there. In a way, it's unfair to compare fiat currencies to Bitcoin. The picture is very much showing a massive appreciation of Bitcoin versus any fiat currency since inception. The example here is Bitcoin versus US dollar. You might have heard about central bank digital currencies, also called CBDCs. Those are being planned by a number of central banks in the world, which is effectively to create a digital fiat currency version of their current currencies. There won't be any difference in really the way they work, so you can see them exactly the same way. Against gold, we have a slightly better picture, but it still points in the same direction for Bitcoin, a big appreciation over time. A way to understand this growth is to look at a log scale with the USD as a benchmark for Bitcoin. Then you start to see a trend that is more understandable about the trajectories that Bitcoin is following. But why is that? Before we answer that, let's just go some few pros and cons about Bitcoin. On the con side, we have the fact that there is a regulatory risk, particularly with recent implosions of exchanges and tokens in the crypto industry. There are more calls for regulation, and some countries have banned cryptocurrencies, like China, for instance. The industry is still very much the Wild Wild West. There's a lack of transparency of centralized exchanges about their financials and reserves, as we saw recently with FTX. This is still very much a work in progress to get to some level of maturity in the industry. The value of Bitcoin, like most things, is linked to the trust that we have in it. That trust could disappear and the value could get to zero. It has happened to some crypto tokens, for instance, like Luna. There's still lots of speculation and bad actors around. The markets are very much manipulated, which means that short-term investment is a bit like going to the casino. And you have to be careful with what you do with your transactions. They cannot be reversed, which means that when you make a mistake, there's no turning back. On the pro side, we have the fact that it's purely electronic. Bitcoin is highly accessible and liquid as long as you have an internet connection. It also provides anonymity and transparency when conducting transactions. Anonymity because you are only using an address, not your name, when you transact. And transparency because everything is on the public blockchain. The value of crypto does not depend on decisions from a central authority like a central bank. If it becomes more and more adopted, then an investment in crypto now may pay out much more than more traditional types of investment. It's a faster and more efficient way to do cross-border payments and remittances, and it does not inflate. It is actually deflationary for the number of bitcoins in circulation. The question remains with Bitcoin about what could make it grow stronger or what could make it fall apart entirely. Bitcoin adoption seems to be going through a couple of concepts that we human beings have been willingly or not going through our life. The first one is game theory. This refers to how actors in a system engage with each other and principally how we react to each other's potential moves. For miners, the proof of work system allows to create a system which is trustless cooperation. That means that the trust is in the system, it's not between the parties. For customers, there is no trust at all in some ways. It's a traditional prisoner's dilemma. So we're in a way forced to decide, should I buy or should I not? And then we think that if we don't buy, then we will be missing out, therefore we buy. And interestingly, this is a concept that can reproduce itself at the level of countries, which is the first countries, and then the second country is thinking, I'm gonna miss out. The second concept is network effect. This states that the usefulness of a network increases with the number of users. A good example is with phone lines, as you can see on this chart. The more connections you have, the more possibilities for connections you get. Bitcoin benefits from the same system of network effect. The more players on the market, the more owners of Bitcoin, the more benefit there is for everyone. This shows the adoption of Bitcoin by actors over time, and we're still in early days. Also, what you can see here is a comparison with the adoption of Internet. It is interesting to see how slow it might be at the beginning and how it has an inflection point with accelerated growth. There's one question that remains. Is Bitcoin actually a currency, a mode of exchange, or is it a store of value? Is it like digital gold? It seems to be sitting somewhere in between. It might never be as convenient as cash or electronic cash as a mean of payment due to a lack of speed, essentially. But it's certainly much easier to hold and transact than gold. Maybe that will be the niche for Bitcoin, the middle ground between fiat currencies and gold. What currencies do I have, you might ask? I have a mix of different currencies and I use them principally as part of investments, so not kept in cash. Those currencies are a mix of what are the strongest currencies in the world today, but also the ones that I believe are going to do well in the next 10 to 20 years. You can check out my playlist about all the comparison with currencies out there and decide what makes sense for you. And I do have Bitcoin, but I do not own it from a currency perspective. I own it because it acts like a digital gold on steroids for me. And I tend to believe in the logarithmic story of the evolution of Bitcoin. I might well be proven wrong. And you know what is the ultimate currency? What it is you. Because your capacity to generate revenues, to actually create wealth by yourself, is the best guarantee against money printing, inflation, etc. And if you want to focus on building those life assets that actually can create more wealth for yourself, then check out this video here and here, or explain what are the different life assets that you have for yourself, how you measure them, and how you can help them grow. Check it out.